Hi, welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be a response or a commentary on a video that I watched this morning. It was a conversion story. It was a woman, her name is Sophia. Let me see if I can see her last name here. Sophia Nikolai. Sophia Nikolai. She was on somebody else's show, and then I found her channel, and I went to her channel to watch her story. And it was really a beautiful story. All of these conversion stories really are inspiring to me. It shows the different paths people go, the different experiences people have coming back to the church or coming to the church. Um, when I was a couple of years back, I was at a parish in Burbank, California, St. Robert Bellarmine, and I was involved in the RCIA. It's called something different now, but back then it was RCIA, Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults. And it's essentially a program for people that did not make their confirmation, now they do, and people that want to convert. And so I joined this. Um, they asked me to join because they thought that I was somewhat knowledgeable, and if somebody was in the program and they had questions, I would be able to answer some of their questions on the church. And one of the things that happened while I was there that this memory that I have is the in charge of the program was a woman, a nun named Sister Rita, and the candidates or catechumens, depending on which how they were entering the church. Um, at one point, it starts in the fall, I believe, and then it goes all the way through to Easter, and they're confirmed or baptized at the Easter Vigil. Excuse me, at the Easter Vigil. And during the year, at Sunday Mass, at a certain Mass, they're there. And at one point, they get up and they leave. And as they're leaving, someone leads them out holding, I think usually holding a Bible or another book. And we see them walking by us as they're leaving. And Sister Rita said to us, that those of us that were being sponsors, that a lot of the people that are watching them are thinking to themselves, if I wasn't born Catholic, would I be converting? Would I ever join? And a lot of us that are cradle that are cradle Catholics, we don't want to change. We like going to church; it's familiar, and so we stay. But then there's some that, um, for many reasons, leave. Anyway, the story was fascinating because she was, people convert, and there were people from different backgrounds that were converting. And in this case, Sophia Nikolai's story is conversion of a anti-Catholic to a Catholic. How did somebody go from being an anti-Catholic to being received into the church? And her story is that she was baptized in a Lutheran church, and then her parents divorced when she was around 10. Her mother joined an evangelical church, and brought her daughter right along. While she was there, a lot of these evangelical churches have a worship service, and then there's a fellowship hall, and there's a church, a youth group, which are great. It's great. These the young people get together and they interact with each other, and they back each other up in the faith. And there's a term, being on fire with your faith, right? That's something that happened. One of the things that they did is that she had to be baptized again because they don't believe that her infant baptism was valid, and the baptism later on, when she is of um, consent, age of consent, um, she that baptism is also symbolic. The water is symbolic, but her affirmation is what makes the difference, right? Um, anyway, so she joined this, and she went along a path where she was an anti-Catholic, and she mentioned she would read a lot of, watch a lot of James White videos. I've known James White for a long, long time. He's a prolific debater. He'll debate every atheist, to Jehovah's Witnesses, to Mormons, um, I think Muslims, in fact, he's debated. Anyway, and this changed when she met who was to become her future husband. And he was actually not a nominal Catholic. He was actually a very devout or a um, well-versed Catholic. But at some point, he left the church to be with her, and they would attend church together, which she found a lot of peace in. And as things went along, she mentions that he would sometimes go to church to the worship service, and he would have panic attacks, and he would have to leave. And later on, she said that she was she was on Instagram, and she saw a quote popped up. It's a very famous quote. I know it very well. It's John Henry Cardinal Newman, who said, "To be deep in history is to cease being Protestant." I believe he was also Anglican, and then he converted, became a Catholic. And that was a very powerful statement, and it bothered her. And she started to read the Church Fathers, and something that we were told um, a long time ago about if you were to go back in a time machine to the first century, what would the church look like? And a lot of Protestants evangelicals would look like our church. And she mentions this in this video that I watched, where she tells her story that when she read the Church Fathers and she compared that to her church and the worship service, that they were nothing alike. And I know in reading the Church Fathers, one of the things that's very plain, very clear, is the belief in the true presence in the Eucharist. And not just the Church Fathers. There were historians, Josephus and Tacitus. Tacitus was a Roman historian who, at one point, I remember him reading that he referred to the Christians as cannibals because they believed that the bread and wine were the body and blood of Christ, and they ate them believing that. Anyway, then she goes on that she was reading the Church Fathers, and at the same time she was throwing up in a bucket because it was so, uh, what she was reading was so, um, the antithesis of everything that she had believed until that point. But I got to give her credit for sticking with it. And then at some point she mentioned something about she had read so much, and then her husband came to her one day and says, "I'm going back to the church, and you can either come with me or you can stay, but I have to go back." And she joined him. And now, like a lot of, particularly converts, they seem to be they're better versed than a lot of cradle Catholics because a lot of them had to study and read this to make their decision of whether to join the church or not. And she seems to be, but I know that she's still like myself, still reading a lot of things, and a lot of things that we read really um, reinforce uh, our faith. When you read, especially the Church Fathers, but um, through history, there have also been a lot of philosophers who were Catholic, a lot of them, and it's very very good and it's very interesting. And like I said, it reinforces your faith. And now she has a channel, and I'll give you guys the name of it. Sophia Nicolai. Sophia spelled Sophia. Nicolai is Nikolai. And I recommend that you guys check her out. Check out her video. She has another video that I have not watched yet, but I'll watch after I finish watching this, called the Catholic Chronicles. And it looks like she's going to be making more videos. And I plan to subscribe to her and watch the videos. The Catholic Chronicles seems like it's very short. And actually, this is 2 weeks old, and Home to Rome is only 1 day old. Wow. Okay, but it was a very very good story. I plan to do more of these videos responding to conversions. Um, but anyway, let me tell you a bit about kind of what happened to me. I'm a cradle Catholic. I um, was practicing Catholic, cultural Catholic, or for the first 20 plus years of my life. We never missed a Sunday Mass. Went to my mom and dad. My dad, I mentioned in one of my other videos, very strong, very deep in his faith. He would go to Mass daily with his dad and Rosary daily with his mom. My dad's 98 years old. And so we all went to Mass. And one morning I just didn't want to go, and so I didn't go, and they couldn't force me to go, and so I stopped going. And I know that it bothered my dad, um, but I just kept going. I thought that I wasn't anti-Catholic. I was anti-religion. That religion divides people. All these wars, all these people that have died for the faith, for their faith or their beliefs, right? Um, as I look into history, it's now a little bit different than that. A lot of these wars were political. Um, there was many times there was no doctrine being fought over. There were some, but for the most part they weren't. And um, so, and it was actually kind of also kind of cool to not to be anti-religious. And then I was dating a girl. Her name was Wendy, and we had just started dating, and she told me one day that it bothered her that I was Catholic, and I said, well, I'm not. And then she also mentioned, I said, well, what's wrong with Catholic? What do you have a problem with Catholics? And she mentioned you worship Mary, right? And so I thought, something I've read this before or I've heard this before. I'm gonna go back and research this so I can have a good answer when she brings it up again. And I read a book on fundamentalism. It was like a Catholic book to what how to respond. And there was, of course, the portion on um, Mary and how we do not worship her, we honor her. It's a very strong honor, but we don't worship her. Um, Worship is only for God. And so I read this and I thought it was very good. And eventually, Wendy and I split up. We broke up. I married someone else. And but I the reading started me on a path where I was reading other authors, other writers. Um, a great one is G.K. Chesterton. I mean, not just is he a fantastic philosopher, but he's funny, very sarcastical as he's going along, and he does writes about a lot of things, but particularly the faith. And but he's one. Thomas à Kempis, Thomas More. Um, let's see, we read Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross. I joined a Catholic book club at one point, and so I read a lot of these, and this is more recent, so it's kind of fresh in my those are fresh in my mind. But I also read there were books. I go to the bookstore and I go to the religion section. There was a really good book at the time called "Why Do Catholics Do That?" And I think it was meant for people that were kind of like curious, and it taught me a lot of things that I didn't know. Um, Particularly if you're looking through the Bible, um, understanding some things that maybe you thought was something else, but it's not. Um, anyway, that was in my 20s, and many years later, I'm still reading. My dad just gave me a book. It's in Spanish, Oraciones y Devociones, and it's in Spanish prayers with Spanish on one side and Greek on the other side. I'm sorry, Latin on the other side. And now, all these years later, I'm a devout, practicing traditionalist Catholic. And people sometimes ask me, well, what does it mean traditionalist? And it's just my way. It's just something that I feel very comfortable with, something that I find is beautiful. I do a daily rosary in Latin, and so I also have a book here for my nightstand where I keep the prayers in Latin, the rosary in Latin, in case I need to refer them back to them. Some of them I haven't memorized all the way through. Um, Also, I try to attend daily mass, um, and also maybe this is the most important one, is that I always receive on my knees and on the tongue. So people will go up with their hands, and I will go up and I'll kneel and I'll receive on the tongue. For a long time, I didn't kneel. I just received on the tongue. You know what? Some of us that do this struggle with this because I did not want to call attention to myself, um, but I thought that that was the right thing to do. I remember going to a confession downtown. There's a Chinese mission, and before mass they have confession, and so I wanted to ask if I could receive, on my knees and on the tongue, and I went to confession. I was absolved from my sins, and first I asked the priest, can I do this? Do you mind if I receive this way? And he said, well, here we receive on the hand. Why do you want to receive on the tongue and on your knees? And I said, my response was, if I feel that if I truly believe that the true presence is there, then it seems that in reverence, it seems right that I would approach Christ on my knees and not want to soil him with my hands, and I would receive on the tongue. And he said, okay, we'll let you do it. So I did it, and sometimes I'll watch other people that do it as well, and it's a very nice thing to see. And one of the things that um, I've written this. There's other videos that you see on my channel here about on atheism. um, I have a lot of friends, not a lot, but I have a good number of friends that are atheists, and we have very interesting discussions. Um, and I am not. I've never been an atheist, even at the time when I was an agnostic. I called myself an agnostic. I still believed in, or I would say that I didn't know, but I certainly knew that something was there, something was up. Belief in God is not a challenge to me. That's, and I've stated in my videos, in a lot of the videos on atheism, and there's I think a video on talking about God, just specifically about God. That's not a challenge. The challenge is God good? And there are a lot of philosophers over the centuries that have argued for the goodness of God. And the other challenge is, and this is a big one, it's the divinity of Christ and the sacrifice on the cross for our sins. I think about that one a lot, and I'm at peace accepting that. Um, there's a verse in the Bible that I wanted to, it's my old Jerusalem Bible here. And hopefully, Sophia will read this at some point. There's a verse that I've always really liked, and it's at the end of John. And at the end of John, it's when Christ appears to the the disciples, right? Pentecost. He appears to the disciples. It's at the end of John. It's John, was it 20, verse 19. In the evening of that same day, the first day of the week, the doors were closed in the room where the disciples were, for fear of the Jews. Jesus came and stood among them. He said to them, peace be with you. And after saying this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were filled with joy at seeing the Lord, and he said to them again, peace be with you. And that stuck in my mind because, and as I've read commentary on it, he says it twice, peace be with you, and then again, peace be with you. And I always thought, isn't that a wonderful place to be, at peace? And sometimes we'll have moments of peace and then it goes away because something will come up, and especially with kids or family, or challenges in our lives. But those moments when we have peace, those are just fantastic. And I find a lot of peace in our faith. um, One thing about the Catholic faith that is, and this is an argument for God, argument from beauty, is I find the faith beautiful. The tenets of our faith are just, they're humbling how beautiful they are. And anyway, I think I'll leave it at that. Um, Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you please give me a thumbs up goes a long way to the algorithm. And if you write a comment, I would appreciate it. And if you subscribe and ring the little bell so you can get notified when I make new videos. Thank you. Have a great day.